This video is based on the technical analysis of Litecoin, and we're on the monthly chart. And in regards to the monthly chart, we can see that we had actually had some very interesting price action movements. For example, we had this overextended M structure over here, which had a neckline at that point, and at this point over here we saw the neckline being violated to the bottom side, and we saw the market move further down, right? And that is because, guys, generally speaking, whenever we have these M structures, we expect price after breaking to the bottom side of that neckline to head back to the neckline to give it a test, and at that neckline is generally where we look for those potential selling opportunities. Having said that, at this point we can see that this M structure has played itself out, and that is because it started at this point, moved up, gave us this M, and then closed more or less in line with where it started. So we can say at this point that this M structure is no longer valid, right? Having said that, it had a neckline at that point, and that neckline is now also a very strong level of resistance at this point in time, and that is because we've had multiple rejections in and around that area. And what may potentially happen is that we may in the future see the market head up to that level to give it a test, and at that point we may again see the market move further down, right? Another thing that I also want to speak about is that as much as we had this M structure over here, currently we have what seems to be a W structure over here, and just similar to M structures, whenever we have these W structures, we want to see price breaking to the upside of that neckline, and then in the future coming back to the neckline to give it a test. And where we have that neckline generally is where we look for those potential buying opportunities. So at this point we can see that the neckline of this smaller W structure, as I said, has been broken to the upside, and price is in the process of reverting back to where the neckline is. And where we have that neckline is where I believe we should potentially be looking for those buying opportunities. And if we do indeed find any good buying opportunities at this point, I believe that our first take profit should be this level over here. Why that level? That is because it's now a very strong level of resistance at this point in time, as we had, as I said earlier, multiple rejections at that level, and at that level is where we may potentially see the market actually move further down, right? Anyway, what else do we see on the monthly chart that we should be paying attention to? Let me just zoom in a bit. Let's have a look. Another thing that I also want to speak about in regards to the monthly chart is that at this point in time we have this candlestick over here, and what it is a bullish candlestick which has quite a small body and quite a long upper wick. And what that wick tells us at the top is that we have a lot of liquidity there, and liquidity, as you guys by now know, is money that needs to be triggered by the market at one point or another. So as much as at this point things are not looking so rosy in as far as the crypto space goes, this candlestick over here tells us that in the future we will indeed see the market actually move further up to around that level to grab that liquidity. And that is because, as I've said, guys, liquidity is money that needs to be triggered by the market at one point or another. Another thing that I see that I also want to speak about is that we have this candlestick over here. It is very much similar to this one that I just spoke about, in that this one is a bearish candlestick which has a small body and quite a long lower wick, and where that wick ends at the bottom we have a lot of liquidity there too. And as I said, guys, liquidity is money that needs to be triggered by the market at one point or another. And remember, earlier I spoke about how we have a W structure over here. If I can just draw it properly, just bear with me, guys. Let's have a look. Earlier I spoke about how we have a W structure over here with a neckline at that point, and I said that at this point we can see that price is heading back to the neckline to give it a test, and where the neckline is where we should potentially be looking for those buying opportunities. And if we do indeed find an entry rather, we should take profit at around this level over here, right? Anyway, another thing I also want to mention is that as much as we have this W structure over here that I just spoke about, right, just remember that whenever it comes to W structures, what normally happens is that a lot of traders and investors buy on the second leg of that W structure, and they place their stop losses just below. So it is quite possible that, as much as I'm saying that we may potentially look for buying opportunities where the neckline is, what may possibly happen, as I said, is that the market may actually move further down, disregard the neckline to grab all of those stop losses that are located in and around that region, and then only move further up. So we just need to be careful. Another thing that I also want to mention is that as much as we have a W structure over here, we have another one over here, and similar to this one as well. At this point at this level, there were actually a lot of traders and investors buying at that level due to the fact that there's a W structure, right? and they place their stop losses just below. So we have a lot of money also trapped at this level. And as much as I'm saying that where we have the neckline is where we should potentially be looking for buying opportunities, and that also the market may push slightly down to grab the stop losses that are located at that level and then only move up, it's also quite possible that we may see the market actually from where it is move all the way down to around this level to grab the stop losses that are located there, due to the fact that we have, as I said, this W structure that I spoke about, right? So what else do we see on this chart that we should be paying attention to? At this point I don't see much, so what I will do now is head down to the weekly chart. Let's see what's happening on the weekly chart. And here we are on the weekly chart. On the weekly chart, in fact, before we continue, I just want to recap, right? Remember, on the monthly chart we spoke about how we have this W structure which has a neckline at that point, and I said to you guys that at this point is where we should potentially be looking for those buying opportunities, and that if we do indeed find any good ones here, our take profit should be more or less at that level, right? As much as that's the case, we also have an opposing structure in the form of an M structure over here, which also has a neckline at that point. So what this means is that actually buying with a neckline is actually very risky, and that is because we have two opposing structures. Number one, as I said guys, we have this W structure, and number two, we have an M structure, and they both have necklines at more or less the same level. So what this means is that buying or selling in this region is actually very risky. Buying or selling at that region is actually very risky, as the market can go in either direction.